This is part of my camera gear and not just something I wear. Maybe I have a mild textile obsession or compulsive gear hoarding habit, but let me show you why. If you're freezing cold, soaked, too hot, maybe just plain uncomfortable, you can't focus on doing a good movie. That's why this gear is so important to us filmmakers. So today is all about fashion. And at the very end, I'll show you one tiny little thing that changed the way I shoot in bright sunlight and never go on a shoot without it. So let's start with layering, because that keeps me going through a full day of shooting, whether it's -5 in the morning or 25 degrees at the afternoon. I bring the same gear. The trick is knowing how to adjust during the day. So let's go through it from cold to warm, just like I do on a regular shoot. So I usually start with a technical undershirt. It keeps moisture away from the body and helps regulate temperature. Over that, I add a fleece. I have a few different ones depending on how cold it is, and recently I've started using a fleece vest from Fjellreven. It's become one of my favorite mid-layers, especially for days where you need a little bit more warmth but not a full jacket. Then comes the down jacket. Right now I use one from Mammut, warm, lightweight, super comfortable, but before that I had a jacket from Mountain Hardwear, that's the red one here. And the jacket lasted almost 3 years, which is quite a lot for my heavy use. And it's more water resistant and didn't get damaged as easily, but I managed to rip it anyway. So yeah, sadly I haven't found the same outer material again. So I switched from this one to Mammut, and now I rely on an extra layer to protect it even more. That extra layer is usually a hard shell. I've got many of them, one from Fjellreven, one from Mammut and one from Saleva, but Mammut is insanely waterproof. You could stand on a waterfall and stay dry. And at the same time it's breathable. That's the most important thing when you consider a hard shell. Total waterproofing with smart ventilation options. It has vents on the side, but when it really pours, it keeps absolutely everything out. In general, I found that most hard shells are extremely waterproof, which is great, but when it starts to get warmer, they can become a bit of a problem. I've had plenty of moments where I was sweating so much underneath that I ended up just as wet on the inside as I would have been from the rain. So that's why good ventilation is so essential. And if it's really cold out, I add a down vest on top of my down jacket between these layers. It sounds a bit bulky, but it really works. And when it's properly freezing, I switch to my thingy down jacket from Fjellreven. That thing is huge, super warm, and has fur-lined hood that actually helps warm your face by trapping heat and blocking the wind. So that way I can shoot in kind of every cold scenario. As the day gets warmer, I start peeling off layers. First the vest, then the big jacket, then maybe down to just the fleece or even the base layer. And the idea is to stay flexible so your body doesn't overheat, but you're never cold either. And that's really key to layering. Don't wait until you're sweating. If you let it go too long, your clothes get damp from the inside, and once that happens, it's hard to dry them again without taking everything off, which isn't exactly fun when it's still cold outside. That's why I try to keep my core temperature stable throughout the day. Not too hot, not too cold. And especially as camera people, whether you're shooting, assisting or just waiting, we often stand still for long periods of time. You don't move much and your body cools down fast. I often wear way more than I would if I were just walking around. Honestly, there's nothing I hate more than being cold on a shoot. That's why I go for setups that might seem like overkill, but they've saved me more times than I can count. The next thing on my list is pants, because no matter how well your upper body is dressed, if your legs are cold, wet or restricted, you're going to be miserable. For a long time I used zip-off pants, the ones where you can take the lower legs off. Super practical, especially with changing temperatures, and of course a huge fashion statement. I only ever got compliments about how stylish they looked. But in practice I found that I often didn't want short pants on set, mainly because I like having my legs covered for safety, for crawling, kneeling, protection from mosquitoes, thorns, sharp edges, whatever. Especially the knees take a lot of abuse in our job, and I want those covered and reinforced. That's why I switched to full-length pants with built-in ventilation. My go-to now, again, Fjellreven. These pants are made with G1000 fabric, a super durable, densely woven material that you can actually wax. In winter I iron a thick layer of wax, and that makes them impressively water resistant. And then in the summer I wash the wax out again, and the fabric becomes lighter and more breathable. The waxing doesn't just help with water, it also makes the pants tougher overall. For me, that fabric is one of the best things about these pants. It's strong, flexible and lasts forever. And on the higher end models, the stress points like knees, seat and cuffs are all reinforced. The ventilation zips are what makes them work year-round. If you're warm, open the zips. If you're cooled down, close them. That's way more effective than trying to change pants or rely on shorts. That said, all of this applies mostly to outdoor shoots or extreme locations. If I'm filming in the city, I wear regular clothes, jeans and winter shorts in summer, but for tough conditions, I want gear that keeps me protected. In winter, I also prefer unlined pants with a base layer underneath. I use long underwear from Audiio. Funny story, I found a set of women's XXL bottoms on clearance once, and they actually fit surprisingly well. A bit big, but for the price I couldn't say no. And the reason I like unlined pants is flexibility. I can wear them year-round, in winter with the Audiio layer underneath, in summer without. And if I get warm during the day, I can just take the base layer off. That's a lot harder to do if your pants are already lined. So for me, that setup just makes more sense and saves a bit of money too. Shoes are one of the most underestimated pieces of gear on set, but for me, they've become essential. If your feet hurt, if they're wet, if you're slipping around, everything else becomes secondary. So here's what I use and why. Let's start with the ones I rely on most. My Hanwag leather boots. I've had them for almost 12 years now. They've been everywhere with me. Guy du Midi, Kyrgyzstan, Canada, and they're still going strong. I recently had them resoled, so now I got a brand new sole on a fully broken-in boot, and that's just the best feeling, full comfort and full grip. These boots are high, tough and protect my ankles, which is crucial, especially on rough terrain like Quarry, where I'm currently filming wildlife, sharp rocks, deep mud, dry dust, and all of that sometimes in one day. If you slip or twist your ankle out there, it's game over. So I need shoes I can trust. And I take care of them. I clean, oil and wax them regularly. Leather needs love, but when you give it that, it lasts forever. For summer or more flexible setups, I've got a pair of lightweight hiking shoes. They're not too warm, still stable and good enough to wear all day, whether I'm walking through a city or wading through a swamp. I used them recently on a shoot in Lord Howe Island in Australia and they were perfect. Breathable, supportive and not too heavy, which is pretty important when you take it on a long flight. And then there's the pair I regret most. I bought a pair of Panama Jack Igloo boots. On paper they look great, warm, lined and not cheap either, at over 230 euros. But in practice they are actually terrible. They have no real stability and worst of all, they are not really waterproof. If you step into deeper snow or wet ground, you're soaked in seconds and nothing is worse than wet insulated shoes. Once they're wet, they stay wet. So yeah, strong pass on Panama Jack. That's why for winter waterproofing is absolutely essential, and that's not just from the store. You've got to keep reapplying protection. Same with your rain jackets. By the way, the treatment wears off over time. If you want your gear to last and keep working, you've got to take care of it. So yeah, I take my shoes seriously, they carry me and all my gear every single day on set. The next one is kind of tricky. It's about gloves. You want warm fingers, but you also need to be able to press tiny buttons, operate lenses and tap on touchscreens. And usually those two things don't go together. That's why I carry different type of gloves depending on the job. My go-to for extreme cold are gloves from the Heat Company. They're designed to flip open at the fingers but still keep everything protected. You can even slide heat pads into the built-in compartments, which is a lifesaver when temperatures drop and you're not moving much. Because once your fingers are cold, they stay cold. When I know I'll need full control, I use gloves from Mechanics. They're originally made for shooting, as in firearms, which means you can operate stuff with precision. They've got a great fingertip sensitivity and they work with touchscreens, which is super helpful on set. Because you can really feel through the gloves, they are great for pulling focus and adjusting settings without having to take them off. No glove can do everything, but having the right one for the right moment makes a huge difference. And just like with jackets and boots, don't cheap out. Cold fingers can ruin your day. Now let's talk about hats. You've probably seen me wearing one in almost every video. And that's not just for looks. Hats are one of my favorite and most useful pieces of gear. When it's really cold, of course I wear a beanie, but as soon as the temperature allows it, I switch to my felt hat. And once it gets warmer, I go for a straw hat. The felt hat keeps my head warm and protects me from wind. And the straw hat is super light and breathable when it gives me full shades on my face, ears and most notably my neck as well. Much better than a cap, which only covers the front and makes me sweat way more. So even though hats might seem like just a style choice, they're actually really practical. Protection, airflow and comfort in one, so that's nice. And now to the cliffhanger I teased in the beginning, my sunglasses. They're darker at the top and clear at the bottom, and that's kind of a game changer. I'm always looking down at my monitor when I shoot, it's like right here. And with these I can still see the screen clearly through the bottom part of the lens while keeping my eyes protected from the sun above. That saved me a lot of squinting and frustration. And one important thing with sunglasses, never use polarized sunglasses on a shoot. I've made that mistake a few times, and while they're great for reducing glare, they also make your monitor turn completely black in certain angles, which is, not ideal. So always go for non-polarized lenses if you're working with screens and cameras. And of course, it's also very important to always look very cool. So clothes might not be the first thing you think about when you pack your camera gear. But for me, it's just as important. If I'm cold, wet or uncomfortable, I can't focus. I can't move properly and definitely can't create the way I want. If you got a favorite piece of kit I should know about, let me know in the comments. I'm always looking to improve the setup. So thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you next time, and have a nice one.